The cold stone of the royal shrine was unforgiving beneath my knees, the chill seeping through the thin silk of my robes. The air was thick with the scent of sandalwood and the faded incense of centuries of prayers. For a long time, I knelt there, my back straight, my hands resting limply in my lap, and stared at the silent, gilded statues of the ancestral deities. They offered no comfort, no answers, just the same placid, knowing smiles they always wore. Footsteps echoed, soft but deliberate, in the corridor outside. The heavy wooden door groaned open, and I didn't need to turn to know who it was. The presence that filled the room was achingly familiar, yet it now felt like a stranger's. "Warner," his voice came, a low, measured whisper that used to send a thrill through me. Now, it just made the knot in my stomach tighten. "You've been here for hours." The servant said, "You haven't eaten." I finally turned my head, my eyes landing on the man who was supposed to be my future. Zhao Minghao, my fiancé, the one I had loved since I was a naive girl of 16. He was handsome, undeniably so, with sharp features and a perpetual air of quiet authority. He wore his official's robes impeccably, a man who carried the weight of his family name with pride. But the eyes that looked down at me now were different. They held a flicker of guilt, a storm of conflict, and a new, unwelcome resolve. "Has the decree been sent?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of the hurt that was threatening to consume me. "Has the emperor given his permission to dissolve our betrothal?" He flinched as if I had struck him. A moment of hesitation passed, a flicker of the old warmth in his gaze, but it was quickly smothered. He stepped closer, and I felt the air between us grow heavy. "Warner, please, just listen to me. I have to do this. It's not what you think, not what I think." I let out a short, brittle laugh that echoed in the stone chamber. "You asked me to come here. You knelt before me not an hour ago and asked me to break our engagement. You said you loved Liling." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. My younger sister. The girl I had protected, doted on, and trusted with every secret of my heart. "What else is there to think?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of agitation I knew so well. "I know how it sounds. I know it's madness. But you need to understand it's not just a whim. It's Liling. She's different. She's gentle, uncomplicated. When I'm with her, the world makes sense. Everything that weighs on me, all the politics and the schemes, it just melts away. You've always been so strong, Warner. You're a pillar of stone. You don't need me the way she does. She needs my protection. She needs me." The gall of it. My hands, which had been so still, began to tremble. I had been his pillar. I had stood beside him when his family was in disgrace, when his father was accused of corruption. I had used my family's connections, my own intelligence, to navigate the treacherous waters of the capital's politics, all to save him, to elevate him, and this was my reward. I was too strong, and my sister was weak, and she needed him. A surge of pure, unadulterated fury, so hot it burned away the frost in my heart, finally gave me the strength to rise. I got to my feet, my joints aching, but my spine was as rigid as the stone I'd been kneeling on. I looked him in the eye, a stranger wearing the face of the man I loved. "Your love for me is based on my usefulness," I said, the words cutting through the silence like shards of ice. "And my love for you was a blinding weakness I can finally see clearly. You want to marry Liling? Fine. I will not stand in your way. You can have each other." His eyes widened in shock. He had expected pleading, tears, the hysterics he was perhaps dreading and a little bit hoping for. He had not expected this cold, quiet acquiescence. You don't mean that. Warner, I know you're angry, but angry?" I laughed again, and this time it held a touch of genuine, bitter mirth. "No, Minghao, I am not angry. I am grateful. You have given me the greatest gift you could ever bestow, clarity. You have shown me the truth of my own situation. I was a fool to waste my heart on a man of such shallow depth. I walked past him, my robes rustling against the stone floor. I did not look back at his stunned face. I didn't need to see the future he had chosen. I was already walking towards my own. I strode out of the shrine and into the gilded prison of the palace, a new, cold fire blazing in my chest. The girl who had knelt there, crying, was gone. In her place was a woman who had just been given permission to put her own life first. The walk to the main hall of the Zhao residence felt endless, each step echoing the finality of my decision. The palanquin ride back from the shrine had been a blur, my mind racing with 1,000 plans. I knew the city well. I knew the palace better. The intricate web of power was a game I had been playing since I could speak, a game I was now going to win at all costs. The hall was bustling with servants, and as soon as I entered, the senior Lady Zhao, Minggao's mother, met me with a face of practiced concern. "Waner, where have you been? We were worried. What is this talk I hear about you being at the shrine alone? The Duchess, your mother, she must be beside herself. Your engagement is only a month away. You should be at home, preparing, not running about." Her eyes darted to my sister, Liling, who was seated in the corner, looking pale and fragile in a dress of soft pink, the perfect picture of pure, helpless innocence. She wouldn't meet my gaze. "Has my mother been informed?" I asked, my voice cold as the marble floor. Senior Lady Zhao's face contorted in a confused frown. "Waner, what is the meaning of this? I asked you a question. Have you and my son had a quarrel? You mustn't take things so seriously. Liling, come here, child. Tell your sister everything is fine. This is just a lover's spat." Just then, Ming Hao entered the hall, his face stormy. He walked past his mother and took his place at the head of the room. He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flash of the old adoration in his eyes, but he quickly masked it with a stern front. "It is not a lover's spat, mother," Minggao said, his voice heavy. "I have spoken with the emperor. He has agreed to grant a dissolution of the betrothal contract between me and the eldest Miss Gu on the grounds of incompatibility." He barely choked the word out. A low hum of shock rippled through the servants. Senior Lady Zhao's face drained of all color. "You what? You did what? You're throwing away a connection to the Gu family, the most powerful family in the capital. For what? For her?" She pointed a shaking finger at Liling, who whimpered and shrank further into her chair. "She is a Gu, too." Ming Hao shot back, his own frustration boiling over. "You always said you wanted a peace, a perfect union. Liling is gentle, she's refined. Liling is a child," Senior Lady Zhao screeched. "She has no influence, no backing. Waner has been the one managing the household, negotiating with the merchants, securing our position. Who will do that? You are a fool, Zhao Minghao, an absolute fool." I watched the family spectacle unfold with a detached sense of amusement. My sister's plan was so transparent it was laughable. She sat there, a perfect porcelain doll, letting her future mother-in-law rage at her, letting Minghao defend her. It was the classic maneuver of the beautiful, helpless younger sister. And it was working. I walked towards the center of the room, and the bickering stopped. All eyes were on me. I stood tall, letting the silence hang for a moment before I spoke. "It is settled, then. My engagement to Zhao Minghao is over. I no longer have any ties to this family. You are all free to do as you wish. I will have him destroyed for this." Senior Lady Zhao cried, clutching a handkerchief to her chest. "I will not have my son's future ruined by a scheming little—" "Mother," Minghao warned, his face red with fury. I walked out of the hall, my footsteps steady and my head held high. I didn't bother to look back. I heard my mother's worried voice as she entered the courtyard, but I brushed past her, whispering, "Not now, Mother. I'm fine." As I made my way through the labyrinthine corridors of the palace, I felt a sense of liberation I had never known. The weight that had been crushing my spirit for years The weight of being the perfect, dutiful daughter, the capable, uncomplaining fiancée, had finally lifted. Now, I was free, but my freedom was not just a personal matter. My family, the Gu family, had just been publicly humiliated, and it was time for my sister and that fool, Zhao Minghao, to learn a very important lesson about the nature of power. My gaze drifted to the northern wing of the palace, the tallest spire that could be seen from anywhere in the city, the Crown Prince's residence. My father had always spoken of the Crown Prince, Lianshan, with a cautious reverence. He was a figure of mystery, of immense power, and of terrifying ambition. The rumor was that he was looking for a wife. My sister's betrayal had given me the perfect opportunity, the perfect weapon. I stopped walking. I had been on my way to my family's carriage, ready to retreat home and begin my life of shame. But that plan, that passive acceptance, was for the girl I had been this morning. The woman who stood here now was different. I turned and walked towards the Crown Prince's residence, my heart hammering against my ribs. The guards outside his palace gate crossed their spears, barring my way. "State your business, lady. My name is Guwan," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I am the eldest daughter of the Duke of Jing. I request an audience with His Highness, the Crown Prince." The guards exchanged a glance. They knew the name. They knew the scandal. Word traveled fast in the palace. I saw the skepticism on their faces, the judgment. But they couldn't refuse a lady of my rank outright. "Wait here, lady," one of them said, and disappeared inside. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the spring wind rustling the flowers in the gardens, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I had just been jilted. I had just been made a laughingstock. And yet, I was about to do the most daring thing of my life. I was going to offer myself to the most powerful man in the empire, a man who could either save me or destroy me. The guard returned. "His Highness will see you." I took a deep, steadying breath, squared my shoulders, and walked through the gates. The world, it seemed, was not going to end today. It was just beginning. The Crown Prince's private study was a world away from the fussy, opulent chaos of the Zhao residence. It was a room of quiet, immense power. The walls were lined with scrolls, maps, and weaponry, a testament to a mind that was both scholarly and warlike. The air was cool and smelled of old paper and ink. Lianshan stood with his back to me, gazing out of a window that overlooked the entire capital. He was taller than I remembered from the few times I'd seen him at court ceremonies, a powerful, silent figure draped in robes of deep imperial blue. The sunlight caught the edge of his profile, illuminating a face of sharp, forbidding beauty. He didn't turn when I entered, but his voice, a low, resonant baritone, filled the room. "Lady Guwan, I confess, I did not expect to see you so soon after your public humiliation." The words were direct, even cold. The sound of his voice, that cool, dismissive tone, sent a shiver down my spine. He was taunting me. He knew exactly what had happened. "Forgive my audacity, Your Highness," I said, curtsying low. "But the situation is what it is. I have come to offer you a proposition." He turned then, his dark eyes, the color of rich ink, fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. "I am listening. I did not have time for coyness." "You need a wife, a crown princess, someone who is not merely a pretty face but a strategist, a partner who can navigate the treacherous waters of court politics and help solidify your position. I have been raised for it. I know every player in this game, their strengths, their weaknesses, their secrets. I can be more useful to you than any other woman in the empire." His gaze was unwavering, a cold, analytical assessment. He seemed to be peeling back layers of my soul with his eyes. "And what makes you think I need a partner, Lady Gu? I have a standing army. I have the Emperor's ears. I have the support of half the court. Half the court, Your Highness," I countered, meeting his gaze. The other half is actively plotting your downfall. My family, the Gu family, may be in a temporary state of scandal, but we are still the most powerful family in the capital. We have influence. We have wealth. We have access to the merchants, the scholars, and the armies of the southern provinces. My father's loyalty is a known quantity. I am offering you the entirety of that power, consolidated behind you. You are offering me your father's power? He asked, a trace of dark amusement in his voice. After you were just discarded by a lowly official's son, you think you can negotiate with me? The barb stung, but I refused to flinch. My engagement was a childish mistake, Your Highness. A lesson I will not forget. The man who broke my heart has shown his true colors. He is a fool, and his family's star will fade. But I remain Guwan. The core of my worth was never tied to the Zhao family. It is tied to my blood, my intelligence, and my resolve. I am offering you a strategic alliance that will be the envy of the world. He rose from his chair and walked towards me slowly, his steps measured and deliberate. He came to a stop only a foot away. I could feel the warmth radiating from him, the sheer presence of his power. He reached out and tilted my chin up with a single finger, forcing me to look directly into his eyes. You are a brave one, Lady Gu, or a very foolish one. He studied my face, a flicker of something unreadable in his expression. You were wronged today, yes. Your sister and that fool have slandered you. You wish to use me as your sword of vengeance. Tell me, what do you truly want? To see him grovel? To see her suffer? Yes, I said, the word escaping before I could stop it. But it is more than that. I want to show them. I want to show the world. I am not a victim. I am a force to be reckoned with. I will not be discarded and forgotten. I will ascend, and I want them to watch. He stared at me for a long, breathless moment, a silence that seemed to stretch into eternity. The air was thick with unspoken words and the crackling tension between us. I could see him weighing my words, calculating the risks and rewards, and then a slow, approving smile spread across his face, a smile that was more terrifying than any scowl. Very well, Lady Gu, he said, his voice a low, silk-covered threat. You have caught my attention, but understand this. If you are to be my crown princess, you will be mine in every way. Do not mistake this for an alliance of convenience. I do not share, and I do not suffer betrayal. Your life, your loyalty, and your heart will belong to me alone. He leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear as he whispered, Tell me, Lady Gu, will you offer me your heart, or will you give it to me on a silver platter? A shiver of pure primal fear and excitement shot through me. I had just stepped into a lion's den, and I had offered to become the queen. The risk was monumental, but the reward was everything. I have been a fool once, Your Highness. I will not be a fool again. I met his gaze. You are the most powerful man in the empire. I offer you my loyalty and my dedication. Is that not enough? He let out a low, amused chuckle that seemed to vibrate through the floor. It is a start. He stepped back, his demeanor shifting back to that cool, collected ruler. Prepare yourself, Lady Gu. The announcement of our betrothal will be made by the Emperor's decree tomorrow morning. Consider your vengeance secured. Consider yourself my crown princess. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. It was done. In a single afternoon, I had gone from a jilted bride to the future empress of the known world. The shock of it was almost too much to process. He turned back to the window, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. You may go. I have work to do. Thank you, Your Highness, I murmured, curtsying one last time before practically gliding out of the room. My mind was a cyclone of emotions, elation, terror, triumph, and a strange, wild joy. The corridor outside the Crown Prince's residence felt like a different world. The guards now bowed their heads as I passed. Their demeanor changed from suspicion to deep reverence. Word had already spread. The silence that followed me was a stark contrast to the whispers and laughter of earlier. As I stepped out into the courtyard, the bright afternoon sun blinded me for a moment. I saw a group of officials and their wives who had been watching the scene, their faces frozen in expressions of disbelief and calculation. They all knew the significance of what had just happened. At the center of this group stood Zhao Minghao, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. Beside him, clinging to his arm, was my sister, Li Ling, her face pale and her lips parted in stunned horror. The scene was perfect, scripted by fate. I walked past them, my head held high, the silk of my robes whispering against the stones. I didn't pause. I didn't look at them. My gaze was fixed on the horizon, on the endless possibilities that lay before me. I had just married the devil, and I was going to make him, and everyone else, bow to me. "Warner!" I heard Li Ling's voice, high and thin, as I passed. "Warner! What happened? Are you okay?" I paused, just for a moment, and turned my head slightly. I looked at my sister, at this snake in the grass, who had tried to steal my life. A cold smile touched my lips. "I am better than okay, little sister," I said, my voice dripping with icy venom. "I have just secured the most important alliance of my life. I will be the crown princess. I suggest you and your new fiancé learn your place." I didn't wait for a reaction. I walked on, leaving them in the rubble of their own making. The carriage ride back to the Gu estate was a blur of muted conversations and furtive glances. As I entered the main hall, my mother, the Duchess of Jing, was pacing frantically. "What have you done, Warner? Tell me what you have done." I smiled, the gesture feeling alien on my face. "I have saved our family, Mother. I have secured our future. In the eyes of the world, I was jilted, but now I am the crown princess. Call it fate, or call it luck." "But the crown prince, Warner," she cried, her voice trembling. "He is not. He is a dangerous man. They say he has no heart." I let out a quiet, chilling laugh. "Then I will teach him one." The next day dawned bright and clear, but the atmosphere in the capital was thick with tension. The emperor's decree arrived just as I was breaking my fast. The scroll was delivered by a grand eunuch, his voice booming in the hall as he read the proclamation. "By order of His Imperial Majesty, the betrothal of Lady Guwan and the Crown Prince He Lianchen is hereby announced. The wedding shall take place in 1 month's time. All are to rejoice." My family fell to their knees in a flurry of silk and prostrations, shouting their gratitude to the emperor and their blessings for me. I stood amidst the chaos, my back straight, a triumphant smile playing on my lips. This was the start of my new life. The world would soon know who Guwan really was. A few hours later, I was dressed in robes of shimmering gold, a crown of phoenix feathers on my head. The procession to the crown prince's palace was a grand affair, a parade of power designed to humiliate my detractors. The crowds were thick, their whispers a mixture of awe and curiosity. I saw Zhao Minghao and Li Ling in the crowd, their faces pale and drawn. Good, let them watch. I reached the palace, and the wedding ceremony was held in the main hall. The crown prince stood at the altar, resplendent in his wedding robes, his face as cold and beautiful as a winter's morning. He looked at me, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. I walked towards him, a vision of defiance. The ceremony was a blur of incense, formal gestures, and muttered vows. At the end, he took my hand, his grip warm and firm. "Welcome, my crown princess," he said, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "This is your new home." He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. "And I assure you, the fun is just beginning." He led me to the wedding chamber. The room was a breathtaking spectacle of red silk and golden lamps. A massive bed, draped in ruby velvet, dominated the space. He closed the heavy doors behind us, and the sound was like a thunderclap. The world outside ceased to exist. It was just the two of us. He walked away from me, pouring 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to me, the liquid sloshing slightly as my hand trembled. I could feel the tension crackling in the air. "A toast, my bride," he said, raising his glass, "to a marriage of convenience, to a union of power, to our victory." I met his gaze and raised my glass. "To our victory." He downed his wine in one smooth gulp. I did the same, the bitter liquid warming my stomach. He set the glass down and took a step closer. His hand came up to my chin again, tilting my face up. "Tell me," he murmured, his voice a low, hypnotic whisper, "are you afraid of me?" I took a steadying breath, refusing to show weakness. "I am afraid of you, but I am not your enemy." He smiled, a slow, predatory smile. "No, you are my wife. And you are the one person in the world who has ever dared to offer me a deal as an equal. You are remarkably interesting." His hand slid from my chin to my cheek, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. The touch was surprisingly gentle. "But understand this," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I will protect you. I will give you everything you desire. In return, you will love me. You will be mine. Heart and soul. There is no room for secrets in this marriage. Do you understand?" I met his gaze. I saw the intensity in his eyes, the vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide behind his mask of power. He was offering me a partnership, but he was also demanding everything. "Yes," I said, my voice a hushed whisper. "I understand." He didn't say another word. He just closed the distance between us and kissed me. It was a kiss of victory, of possession, of a beginning. It tasted of wine and power and a hint of salt. As he pulled away, I knew my life had just been irrevocably changed. I was no longer Guwan, the scorned woman. I was the crown princess, and the real game had just begun. The morning after the wedding, I woke to find the crown prince's side of the bed empty. His pillow still bore the faint indentation of his head, and the scent of sandalwood and something uniquely him lingered in the air. A silk robe was draped over a chair by the bed, a silent message that he had not abandoned me, but had simply risen early. Duty, it seemed, knew no rest. A team of maids entered, their eyes lowered, and helped me into a set of robes even more lavish than the ones I had worn the previous night. They were a deep, vibrant crimson, the color of the Empress's phoenix, embroidered with gold threads that depicted a phoenix rising from a sea of flames. It was a clear, unmistakable message. The crown princess had risen, and she was here to stay. As I was being prepared, a senior maid named Yue, a quiet and efficient woman with eyes that seemed to see everything, spoke softly. "Your Highness, the prince has requested you join him for the morning court briefing. He wishes for you to be present." This was an unusual, even unprecedented request. A new bride, especially one married under such scandalous circumstances, was usually kept hidden away in the inner palace, allowed to acclimate to her new surroundings in peace. But He Lianchen was not a usual prince. He was a strategist, and he was throwing me into the deep end of the pool. He wanted to see if I could swim or drown. I followed you through the labyrinthine corridors of the Crown Prince's palace. Every step echoed with the weight of my new status. Servants bowed deeply as we passed, their whispers forming a chorus of speculation. I held my head high, meeting their curious gazes with a steady, disarming smile. The court briefing was held in a large, airy hall with windows that looked out onto the palace gardens. Dozens of officials were already assembled, standing in rows according to their rank. The crown prince sat at the head of the room on a raised dais, his presence commanding the space. He was dressed in robes of imperial gold, his hair secured by a jade crown, looking every inch the future emperor. When I entered, a wave of whispers swept through the room. The officials turned to stare, their expressions a mixture of shock, curiosity, and barely concealed disdain. I could feel the weight of their judgment, the unspoken question hanging in the air, "What is she doing here?" He Lianshan rose from his seat and gestured for me to stand beside him. "Allow me to present my wife, the crown princess," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "She will be my partner in all things. Her counsel is my counsel." The whispers grew louder. I saw several officials exchange glances, their faces dark with disapproval. This was a direct challenge to the traditional order of power. A woman, especially one so recently disgraced, was being given a place at the table. I could practically hear their thoughts. "She is a scheming usurper. She has poisoned the prince's mind. She will bring ruin to the empire." As the briefing commenced, He Lianshan did not immediately involve me. He listened to reports on border skirmishes, grain shortages, and the ongoing machinations of the rival factions at court. I stood quietly, observing, cataloging, and analyzing. I knew many of these officials by reputation. I knew their ambitions, their secrets, their weaknesses. I could see the subtle cracks in their political alignments, the hidden alliances and quiet betrayals. Finally, one of the senior ministers, a portly man named Grand Secretary Zhang, stepped forward. He was a powerful figure, a man who had grown fat on his position, and he was a known supporter of the prince's younger brother, the ambitious Prince Yong. "Your Highness," he began, his voice oily and respectful, "I must humbly inquire about the recent upheaval. The betrothal to Lady Gu, while a blessed event, has caused some confusion. There are rumors." He Lianshan's face remained impassive. "Rumors, Minister Zhang?" "Yes, Your Highness. It is said that the Empress Dowager herself is displeased. She believes that a crown princess should be of a more stable family background, a woman of unquestionable reputation. She fears that this union might destabilize the court." I felt a cold fury ignite within me. Minister Zhang was not just questioning my worth, he was openly defying the crown prince's will, using the Empress Dowager as a shield. He Lianshan's gaze turned to me, a silent invitation. He wanted to see how I would handle this. The entire room went silent, waiting for my response. I stepped forward, my expression serene. "Minister Zhang, I appreciate your concern for the stability of the court. It is truly admirable. You speak of the Empress Dowager's fears. But let me assure you, I did not come here empty-handed. My family's southern trade network controls the flow of silk, tea, and salt, which is the lifeblood of the empire's treasury. My father's influence in the military, particularly in the southern provinces, is second only to the crown prince's. And my own network of contacts, cultivated over years, can provide intelligence on every foreign power and every domestic threat that might seek to destabilize the throne." I paused, letting my words sink in. I could see the flicker of unease in Minister Zhang's eyes. "The stability of the court," I continued, "is not dependent on a woman's reputation. It is dependent on the strength of the alliances she brings. And in this, I am more powerful than any other woman in this empire. You fear I will destabilize things?" "No, Minister. I am here to reinforce them." A murmur rippled through the room. I had just publicly dismantled the minister's argument and laid my cards on the table for all to see. He Lianshan's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Minister Zhang stammered, I meant no disrespect, Your Highness. I was merely conveying the Empress Dowager's concerns. I am sure she will see your merits. In time, you are dismissed, Minister Zhang, He Lianshan said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. We will speak of the Empress Dowager's concerns at another time. The rest of the briefing continued. But the atmosphere had changed. The officials were now watching me with a new wariness, a grudging respect. I had made my point. I was not a passive ornament. I was an active player. After the briefing, He Lianshan and I walked through the gardens alone. The sun was warm, the air thick with the scent of jasmine. He walked with his hands clasped laughed behind his back, his stride confident and unhurried. "You surprised me," he said, his voice low. "You were not just quick-witted, you were ruthless." "I learned from the best," I replied, a hint of a smile on my lips. "You showed me that power is not about being liked. It is about being respected and feared," he added, his eyes meeting mine. "You must never forget the fear. It is the currency of the throne." He stopped walking and turned to face me fully. "You did well today, but this was just the first skirmish. The Empress Dowager is a formidable opponent. She will not be so easily defeated, and there are others, like your sister and her new husband, who will seek revenge. They will not stop until they have seen you destroyed." "Let them come," I said, my voice steady. "I am ready for them." A flicker of approval shone in his eyes. "Good, because in this palace there is no room for the weak. Only the cunning survive." He reached out and took my hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through me. "You are mine now," he said, his voice a low, possessive whisper. "And I protect what is mine. But remember, I also expect you to stand on your own. A queen does not need a king to fight her battles." "I would not have it any other way," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. I was not just a wife. I was his partner, his ally, his equal in this dangerous, beautiful game of power. We walked back towards the palace, a united front against the world. The first step in our reign of terror had just been taken. Days turned into weeks. The Crown Prince's palace became my home, and I navigated its treacherous corridors with growing confidence. I learned the names and ambitions of every servant, every minister, every eunuch who passed through its halls. I cultivated a network of informants, paying the kitchen maids and the gardeners for scraps of gossip. I was building my own power base from the ground up, layer by layer. And as I did, Lianchin began to open up to me in small, unexpected ways. He would share his doubts about a military campaign, his frustrations with a stubborn general, his fears about the health of the aging emperor. He started to treat me not just as a partner in politics, but as a confidant. I found myself looking forward to these moments, these glimpses of the man behind the mask of power. One evening, as he looked over a map of the northern border, he sighed. "The threat from the northern barbarians is growing. My brother, Prince Yong, has been using this as a pretext to build his own army. He is not just ambitious, he is a threat." I walked over to him and looked at the map. I pointed to a narrow pass in the mountains. "Here, this is the key. If they can capture it, they can hold off any invasion from the north. And if your brother is indeed building an army, he might already have agents in place to secure it." He looked at me, his eyes sharpening with interest. "You know of this pass?" "I have studied the maps of the northern provinces since I was a child," I said. "My father used to say that a war is not won by the soldiers on the field, but by the intelligence gathered before the battle even begins. You need to send an agent there immediately, someone you trust completely." A slow smile spread across his face. "You never cease to amaze me, Guwan. You have a mind like a steel trap." I smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through me. I had never felt so alive. I had never felt so seen. He saw me not as a woman, but as a mind, a weapon, a force to be reckoned with. The thought sent a thrill through me. One afternoon, the news arrived that my sister, Liling, and Zhao Minghao were officially married. The ceremony was small and subdued, a sharp contrast to the grand spectacle of our own wedding. I had expected to feel a pang of bitterness, a resurgence of the old pain, but all I felt was a cold, detached satisfaction. They had made their choice, and they would have to live with the consequences. A few weeks later, I learned from my network that Liling had come to the palace, seeking an audience with me. She was accompanied by a huge entourage, making a grand show of her new status as a respectable married lady. I met her in my private sitting room. She looked different, harder, the soft innocence of her girlhood replaced by a brittle, manufactured confidence. She was dressed in fine silks and adorned with expensive jewels, but her eyes were frantic, desperate. "Hello, sister," she said, her voice overly sweet. "I hope you are well." "I am, thank you," I replied, my tone cool. "What brings you to the palace?" She clasped her hands together, her eyes pleading. "Please, sister, I know I have wronged you. I know that what I did was terrible, but I am begging you, let us move past this. You are the crown princess now. You have everything. Let us be a family again." A family. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. This was the same girl who had kissed my fiancé behind my back, who had smiled sweetly at me while plotting my downfall. And now she was asking me to forgive and forget. "Let us be a family," I repeated, a cold smile playing on my lips. "You and Zhao Minghao are a family now. I have my own. We are no longer connected." "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I am so happy for you. You have the prince. Please, I just want to be part of your life again." I rose from my seat, walking over to her. She flinched as I drew close, but I just reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Liling, my dear little sister," I said, my voice soft and venomous. "You wanted my life, you took it. You stole my fiancé, my future, my dignity, and now you want me to just forget?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It was a mistake. I was young and foolish. Please, I am so sorry." "Sorry is not enough," I said, my voice hardening. "You made your bed, now you must lie in it. I will not interfere in your marriage. I will not destroy you, but I will not pretend we are friends. You are nothing to me now, and your husband, that pathetic man who chose you over me, is nothing. You both chose your path, and you will walk it alone." She collapsed to her knees, sobbing, "Please, sister, I am begging you." I turned away, unable to watch the pathetic display. "You are dismissed, Liling," I said, my voice cold as ice, "and I suggest you never return." I heard the door close behind her, and the silence that followed was absolute. I walked over to the window and looked out at the palace gardens. The world outside was bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, beautiful and serene. But inside, I felt nothing but a profound emptiness. The vengeance I had sought, the moment I had dreamed of, had been hollow. I had triumphed. My sister was humiliated, and Zhao Minghao was a laughingstock. I had everything I could possibly want, and yet I felt a strange sense of loss. I had loved them both, once, and that love, however foolish, had been real. Now I felt nothing but indifference. A few days later, He Lianchen returned from a meeting with his advisors, his face grim. "The Empress Dowager has made her move," he said, his voice tight with barely suppressed fury. "She has called for the examination to see if you are worthy of being crown princess." I felt a jolt of cold shock. The examination was a formality, a ritual designed to test the new bride's virtue and intelligence. It was usually a harmless affair, but it could also be a weapon, a way to publicly humiliate me if I failed. The Empress Dowager was using it to try to undermine my position. "When is it?" I asked, my voice steady. "In 2 days," he said. "The Minister of Rights will be in charge. He is a puppet of the Empress Dowager. He will try to trip you up." "Then we must prepare," I said, my mind already racing ahead. "I will not fail." He reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I know you won't. You are a survivor, Guwan. You always have been." There was something in his voice, a tenderness I had not heard before. It sent a strange warmth through my chest. The day of the examination arrived. The hall was packed with officials, their wives, and the entire imperial family. The Empress Dowager sat on a raised dais, her face a mask of cold disapproval. He Lianchen sat beside her, his expression unreadable. The Minister of Rights stepped forward, his voice ringing out across the hall. "Lady Gu Wan, you are accused of being unworthy of the title of Crown Princess." You have been accused of manipulating the crown prince into this marriage through witchcraft and seduction. You are also accused of being a woman of loose morals, as evidenced by your previous engagement to a man who chose to marry your younger sister over you. How do you plead? The accusations were ridiculous, slanderous, and completely unfounded. But I knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to paint me as a scheming temptress, a woman who had used her feminine wiles to trap a prince. They were trying to make me a villain in the eyes of the court. I walked to the center of the hall, my head held high. I addressed the Empress Dowager directly. Your Majesty, I am guilty of only one thing, loving the crown prince with all my heart. I am guilty of wanting to be his partner, to help him rule this empire with strength and wisdom. I am guilty of being ambitious, but I am not guilty of witchcraft, nor am I guilty of loose morals. My past engagement was a mistake, a youthful folly which I have learned from. I am here today to prove my worth, not to defend myself against slander. The Empress Dowager's lips pressed into a thin line. And how do you intend to do that, girl? I took a deep breath and reached into my sleeve, pulling out a scroll. I have here a detailed plan for the economic development of the southern provinces, a proposal for a new irrigation system that will improve crop yields by at least 20%, and a strategy for negotiating a new trade treaty with the Kingdom of the Western Seas. I have also prepared a rebuttal to the accusations of my character, supported by letters from my father, the Duke of Jing, and my former tutors, who will attest to my intelligence and virtue. I handed the scroll to a eunuch, who passed it to the Empress Dowager. As she unrolled it and began to read, the room fell silent. I could see the color draining from her face. I had prepared for this. I had been preparing for this for weeks. I had not just come to defend myself. I had come to win. I can answer any question you have about the content of this plan, I said, my voice clear and confident. I can recite the names of every major official in the southern provinces and their families. I know their strengths, their weaknesses, and their potential for loyalty. I am not just a pretty face. I am a weapon, and I am here to serve this empire. The room erupted into whispers. The Empress Dowager's face was a mask of barely concealed fury. She had been outmaneuvered, and she knew it. He Lianchin rose from his seat, his voice cutting through the chaos. I believe the examination is over. My wife has proven herself more than worthy. The crown princess will be officially recognized by the imperial court. The Empress Dowager had no choice but to nod, her face pale with rage. The room erupted into a chorus of congratulations and bows. I had done it. I had faced the greatest challenge of my life, and I had emerged triumphant. Later that evening, He Lianchin found me in the garden. The moon was high and bright, casting a silver glow over everything. He walked over to me, a half-smile on his face. "You were magnificent today," he said. "You made the Empress Dowager look like a fool." "Thank you," I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "I had a good teacher." He leaned in and placed a gentle kiss on my forehead. "You are more than I ever dared to hope for, Guwan." And in that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the night and the warmth of his touch, I knew that I was finally, truly home. The battle for the crown was far from over, but we had won the first victory, and together we would win the war. The days following my victory in the Grand Hall were a whirlwind of activity. The court's attitude towards me had shifted perceptibly from open hostility to a wary, calculating acceptance. The whispers still followed me, but they were now tinged with a grudging respect. I had proven that I was more than just a scandalous choice for a wife. I was a formidable political force. With the Empress Dowager's attempt to humiliate me thwarted, the old dowager had retreated to her private chambers, nursing her wounded pride. But I knew better than to think she was finished. She was a woman who had survived decades of ruthless palace intrigue. She would wait, bide her time, and strike again when I least expected it. I needed to stay vigilant, to anticipate her moves before she made them. Meanwhile, my relationship with the crown prince, Fiancé, was deepening in ways I hadn't anticipated. We spent our evenings together, discussing the day's events, planning strategies, and sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. He would read from ancient texts while I worked on my embroidery, and the quiet intimacy of those moments was more precious to me than any grand gesture of romance. I was beginning to see the man behind the fearsome reputation. He was not just a brilliant strategist. He was a lonely man who had been forced to build walls around his heart to survive. One evening, as we sat in his private study, I broached a subject I had been contemplating for some time. "I want to invite my father to the palace for a private audience," I said. "I need to discuss the situation in the southern provinces. His influence there could be the key to securing our position in the south." He looked up from his scrolls, his eyes searching mine. "Your father, he is a shrewd man, but he is also cautious. He has been known to play both sides." "He is my father," I said, my voice firm. "He may be cautious, but he is also loyal to the throne, and he is loyal to me. I am his eldest daughter, his heir. He will not betray me." He nodded slowly. "Very well, I will arrange the meeting. But be careful, Guwan. The palace has 1,000 ears and 1,000 eyes. No conversation is truly private." "I know," I said. "I will be discreet." The meeting with my father took place a few days later in a secluded garden pavilion. The emperor was in poor health, and Fiancé was needed at a military council meeting, so I was left to conduct the negotiations on my own. My father, the Duke of Jing, was a tall, imposing man with a steely gaze and a reputation for being a master manipulator. He had built his fortune on a network of alliances that spanned the entire empire. "Father," I said, after the formal greetings had been exchanged, "I need your help. The Empress Dowager is plotting against me, and there are rumors of a rising threat from Prince Yong. I need your intelligence network in the southern provinces to be my eyes and ears." My father studied me for a long moment. "You have done well for yourself, Warner. I never imagined you would rise so high so quickly." There was a hint of pride in his voice, but also a note of caution. "But you are walking a dangerous path. The crown prince is a man of immense power, but he is also a man of great ambition. Do not mistake his affection for you as weakness. He will not hesitate to sacrifice you if it serves his purpose." "I am aware of the risks," I said, "but I am not a child anymore. I know the games that are played in this palace. I am playing to win." A slow smile spread across my father's face. "You are truly my daughter," he said. "Very well, I will send you a coded message through my contacts. I have a network of merchants, spies, and informants in every province. They will tell me everything I need to know." We spent the next hour going over detailed plans, discussing the political landscape of the empire, and mapping out a strategy to counter the Empress Dowager's influence and Prince Yong's ambitions. By the time we parted, I felt a renewed sense of strength and purpose. I was not alone in this fight. I had my father's backing, and I had my own cunning mind. As I walked back to the Crown Prince's palace, I was intercepted by a servant who bowed deeply and said, "Your Highness, Lady Liling has returned to the palace. She begs for an audience with you. She says she has urgent news." Urgent news? My sister had never shown any interest in my affairs unless it was to cause trouble, but something in the servant's tone made me pause. "Tell her to wait for me in my private sitting room," I said. "I will be there shortly." Liling was pacing nervously when I entered. She looked pale and agitated, and her hands were trembling. "Warner, please, you have to listen to me," she said, her voice breathless. I have just heard something terrible, something that threatens you. I crossed my arms and regarded her with cool suspicion. What is it? Zhao Minghao, she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. He is meeting with Prince Yang. He has been meeting with him in secret for weeks. They are planning something. I don't know all the details, but I do know that they want to bring you down. They want to destroy you, Wanner. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. Zhao Minghao was my ex-fiancé, the man who had humiliated me and chosen my sister over me. He had every reason to hate me, and Prince Yang was the crown prince's greatest rival. If they were plotting together, it could mean serious trouble. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice sharp. You are his wife. You should be loyal to him. Liling burst into tears. I know what I did was wrong. I was so stupid, Wanner. I thought I loved him, but I was just a fool. He doesn't love me. He never loved me. He just wanted to use me to hurt you. And now I see it. He is a monster, and I am so sorry. Her words sent a shockwave through me. For the first time, I saw my sister not as a scheming rival, but as a victim of the same manipulative man who had betrayed me. She was pathetic and weak, but she was also a pawn in a much larger game. I walked over to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. Tell me everything you know, I said, my voice softening, and tell me what you are planning to do. Liling wiped her tears and looked up at me, a spark of determination in her eyes. I want to help you. I want to make amends. I will do whatever it takes to stop them. My mind raced. This could be a trap, a clever play orchestrated by Zhao Minghao and Prince Yang to infiltrate my inner circle. But I had to trust my instincts. My sister was a fool, but she was also a coward. Cowards make the best informants because they are terrified of the consequences of their betrayal. All right, I said, you will be my spy. I want you to tell me everything Zhao Minghao does, everyone he meets, every word he speaks. But you must be careful. If he suspects you, he will kill you. Liling nodded frantically. I will be careful. I promise. I will not let you down. I watched her scurry out of the room, a strange mixture of pity and suspicion swirling inside me. My sister had just offered to betray her husband to help me. It was a dramatic turn of events, and it might just be the key to winning this war. Later that evening, I told He Lianshan everything. He listened in silence, his face unreadable. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Your sister is either a very brave woman, he said, or a very foolish one. Do you trust her? I don't know, I admitted. But she is more useful to us alive and inside the enemy's camp than dead or outside of it. We will use her, and we will see if she is truly loyal. He nodded slowly. You are learning, my love. You are learning the true art of politics. But remember, a snake always sheds its skin. Keep a close eye on her, and never let her think you fully trust her. The weeks that followed were a tense, silent war of maneuver. I received coded messages from my father, providing me with intelligence on Prince Yang's movements and Zhao Minghao's secret meetings. Liling, too, proved to be a surprisingly effective spy. She would meet me in secret, usually in the dead of night, and relay everything she had overheard. Her information was a gold mine of intelligence. I learned that Prince Yang was amassing a private army in the northern provinces. I learned that Zhao Minghao had been forging letters that would implicate my father in a treasonous conspiracy. I learned that the Empress Dowager was secretly funneling funds to Prince Yang's cause. Armed with this knowledge, I began to piece together the full scope of the conspiracy against us. It was a coordinated effort by the Empress Dowager, Prince Yang, and Zhao Minghao to undermine the crown prince and take the throne. They were playing a dangerous game, and they were playing to win. One night, as He Lianshan and I lay in bed, he turned to me, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. We have enough evidence to act, he said. The Empress Dowager's finances, Prince Yang's army, Zhao Minghao's forged letters. It's time to make our move. What do you propose? I asked. We will attack them on all fronts, he said, his voice a low, confident growl. I will have Prince Yang arrested for treason. My agents will intercept the forged letters and expose Zhao Minghao as a traitor. And the Empress Dowager will be publicly shamed for her part in this conspiracy. It is a bold plan, I said, but it will be risky. If we fail, we will be destroyed. If we fail, he replied, a smirk playing on his lips, we will be dead, so let us make sure we do not fail. The plan was set in motion. The next day, the Crown Prince's agents moved swiftly and silently. Prince Yang's residence was surrounded by soldiers in the middle of the night. He was dragged out of his bed and thrown into a dungeon. The forged letters were seized, and Zhao Minghao was arrested and brought before the emperor. The Empress Dowager was placed under house arrest, her power shattered. The trials were swift and merciless. Prince Yang was stripped of his titles and banished to a remote province, never to return. Zhao Minghao was found guilty of treason and executed on the steps of the palace, his head placed on a pike as a warning to all who would conspire against the crown. The Empress Dowager was forced to abdicate her position and retired to a remote monastery, where she was to live out her days in silence. I stood in the grand hall, watching the final act of this bloody drama unfold. The world had changed in the blink of an eye. The enemies who had sought to destroy me were gone, and I had emerged victorious. The Crown Prince stood beside me, his hand clasping mine. We had won. But as I looked around the hall, at the faces of the officials and courtiers who now bowed to us, I felt a strange, haunting sense of loss. I had achieved everything I had ever wanted. I was the Crown Princess. My enemies were dead or defeated, and yet I felt an emptiness that I could not explain. Lianshan turned to me, his gaze soft and warm. You did it, he said. You are the most remarkable woman I have ever known. I looked into his eyes, and I saw the future stretching out before us, a life of power, of intrigue, of triumph. But I also saw a life that would be forever marked by the blood we had shed, and I knew that this was only the beginning. The Game of Thrones never truly ends. There would always be new enemies to fight, new conspiracies to uncover, and new battles to win. But as I looked at the man beside me, I felt a flicker of hope. We would face the future together, a united front against all who would seek to tear us down. And we would win. Because that was what we were born to do. The palace had grown quiet in the weeks following the executions. The silence was heavy, oppressive, but also strangely liberating. The constant hum of whispered conspiracies and hidden threats had dimmed to a low buzz. The Empress Dowager was gone, her influence reduced to the quiet murmurs of a forgotten monastery. Prince Yong was a distant exile, his name never to be spoken in court again, and Zhao Minghao's head had long since been collected from the pike at the palace gate, a grim testament to the cost of ambition. But I knew better than to let the peace lull me into a false sense of security. In the Game of Thrones, silence was not safety. It was simply the pause before the next storm. I continued to cultivate my network of spies, to pore over my father's coded intelligence reports, and to watch the court with an eagle's eye. The Crown Prince, too, remained vigilant, his shadow falling over the empire like a second crown. One evening, as the last of the winter's chill was giving way to the first hints of spring, Lianshan and I walked through the palace gardens, our footsteps the only sound on the gravel paths. The cherry blossoms were just beginning to bud, delicate pink promises in the twilight. The air was crisp, clean, and smelled of damp earth. You seem quiet tonight, he observed, his hand brushing against mine. He had become more affectionate in recent months, his gestures no longer calculated or cold, but warm and surprisingly tender. It was as if the shared victory had broken down a wall between us. I was thinking about the past, I admitted. About my sister, Liling. I have not spoken to her since she helped us destroy her husband. She has been living in seclusion. I wonder if she is truly all right. You can visit her, he said, his voice soft. She is your sister. It is not a sign of weakness to check on her. Maybe, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. But she also helped betray her husband. Can I ever truly trust her? Can anyone? He stopped walking and turned to face me. The fading light cast shadows across his face, making him look like a painting come to life. Trust is a rare commodity in this palace, Guwan. I would say it is the rarest, but you are a better judge of character than most. If your sister has truly changed, she will prove it to you in time. If she hasn't, you will see through her lies soon enough. I nodded slowly. He was right, as always. Trust was a luxury I could not afford, not even for my own sister. We continued walking, and soon we came to a small, secluded pavilion overlooking a koi pond. The water was still and dark, reflecting the sliver of the moon that was just beginning to emerge in the sky. He sat down on the stone bench and gestured for me to join him. There is something I need to discuss with you, he said, his voice dropping to a lower, more serious register. It is about the succession. My heart skipped a beat. The succession? The emperor's health is failing, he said bluntly. It is only a matter of time before he passes, and when he does, the throne will be mine. But I will not simply become the emperor. I will become the target of every scheming noble and every ambitious general in the empire. I will need someone strong beside me, someone I can trust. He took my hand, his grip warm and steady. And I have come to realize that I do not just trust you, Guwan. I love you. I have loved you since the moment you walked into my study and offered me a deal as an equal. The confession hit me like a physical blow. I had suspected his feelings were growing, but to hear him say it aloud, to see the vulnerability in his eyes, was more than I had ever dared to hope for. I love you too, I whispered, the words falling from my lips before I could stop them. I did not expect to feel this way. I came to you for revenge. I came to you as a weapon, but you became so much more. You became my partner, my friend, my home. A smile spread across his face, the first truly unguarded smile I had ever seen from him. He leaned in and kissed me, a soft, tender kiss that held all the promise of a lifetime together. When we pulled apart, the world felt different. The shadows seemed less threatening. The future felt less uncertain. I was no longer just a crown princess, a political pawn in a dangerous game. I was a woman who had found love in the most unexpected place. Then we will face the future together, he said, his voice firm. And we will make this empire what we want it to be. A few days later, I received a message from Liling. It was a simple, unassuming scroll, but its contents made my blood run cold. Warner, I have discovered a new plot. There are whispers of a secret society, a network of assassins funded by the remnants of the Empress Dowager's faction. They have a name, the Black Lotus. They have been hired to kill the Crown Prince. They are planning to strike during the spring festival. You must warn him. Please, I beg you, be careful. I will send more information as soon as I have it. The Black Lotus. I had heard whispers of such a group, a shadowy organization of assassins who operated outside the law. They were a myth, a legend whispered in the dark corners of the palace. But the Empress Dowager had powerful allies, and she was not the type to forgive or forget. The threat was real. I immediately rushed to find He Lianshan. He was in his study, reviewing a stack of official documents. I burst in, my face flushed with urgency. The Black Lotus, I said, my voice tight. I have just received word that they are planning to assassinate you during the spring festival. We need to increase security, double the guards, and cancel all public appearances. He looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. The Black Lotus? They are a myth. A story told to frighten children. They are real, I said, and they are funded by the Empress Dowager's allies. I have seen the proof. Liling sent me a message. She is working to uncover more. He set down his brush and rose from his chair. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp with anger. The Empress Dowager. Even in exile, she still manages to reach out and try to strike me down. It does not matter how, I said. What matters is that we are prepared. We must act now. He nodded, his voice steady and commanding. I will summon the captain of the palace guard. We will triple the security around the palace. I will also send a team of my most trusted agents to investigate this Black Lotus. If they exist, we will find them and destroy them. The preparations were swift and thorough. The palace was transformed into a fortress. Guards patrolled every corridor, every garden, every rooftop. The spring festival was a time of celebration and joy, but this year it was a time of fear and suspicion. I could feel the tension in the air, the sense of impending danger that hung over the palace like a dark cloud. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every whisper seemed to carry a hidden meaning. The night of the spring festival arrived. The palace was aglow with lanterns, their warm, red light illuminating the faces of the courtiers who had gathered for the celebrations. Music filled the air, a lively, joyful melody that contrasted sharply with the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Fiancé and I stood on the main balcony, looking down at the festivities below. The crowds were thick and boisterous, a sea of colorful robes and laughing faces. I scanned the crowd, searching for any sign of danger, any movement that seemed out of place. He placed a reassuring hand on my arm. Relax, he said, his voice low and calming. We are safe. My guards are everywhere. I know, I said, my voice a nervous whisper. But I cannot shake this feeling. Something is not right. He turned to me, his eyes warm and patient. It is your sister's words that have unsettled you. She may be mistaken, or she may be playing a game of her own. Before I could respond, a loud explosion rocked the palace. The ground trembled, and a cloud of smoke billowed up from the direction of the eastern gate. Shouts of alarm filled the air, and the music came to an abrupt halt. It is a distraction, I yelled, grabbing Fiancé's arm. They are coming for you. We must get to the safe room. He did not hesitate. He grabbed my hand, and together we ran down the corridor, away from the chaos. The palace was in a state of pandemonium. Servants and courtiers were running in every direction, their screams echoing off the marble walls. As we rounded a corner, a group of masked assassins appeared, their blades glinting in the lantern light. They had been waiting for us. They attacked without warning, their movements swift and deadly. I screamed, and instinctively I stepped in front of Fiancé, shielding him with my body. The assassins lunged, their blades aimed at my heart. But before they could strike, Fiancé pulled me aside and engaged them himself, his sword flashing in a deadly arc. The fight was brutal and chaotic. I watched in horror as Fiancé fought off two assassins, while a third slipped past him, his blade aimed at my throat. I could not move, could not speak. I was frozen in terror. Just as the blade was about to find its mark, a figure appeared from the shadows. It was Liling. She threw herself in front of me, and the assassin's blade sank deep into her shoulder. She let out a choked scream and crumpled to the ground. Liling! I shrieked, falling to my knees beside her. Fiancé dispatched the remaining assassins with a final brutal stroke, and the battle was over. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Liling's labored breathing. Liling, why? I cried, tears streaming down my face. Why did you do that? She looked up at me, her face pale and drawn, a weak smile on her lips. I told you, Honor. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I wanted to make things right. I held her in my arms as the palace guards swarmed around us. Her eyes fluttered closed, and I thought I had lost her. But the medics arrived in time, and they whisked her away to the infirmary. Fiancé knelt beside me, his face smeared with blood and grime. He pulled me into his arms, holding me close as sobs racked my body. "She saved my life," I whispered, my voice shaking. "My sister saved my life." He stroked my hair, his voice gentle and soothing. "She has redeemed herself, Guwan. She has finally redeemed herself." In the days that followed, Liling slowly recovered from her injuries. The Black Lotus assassins were all either killed or captured, and their network was dismantled. The Empress Dowager's remaining allies were rounded up and executed for treason. But something had changed in me. The revenge I had so desperately craved, the bitter satisfaction I had found in watching my enemies fall, had been replaced by a profound sense of gratitude. My sister had sacrificed herself to save me. She had proven that her love was real, that her remorse was genuine. I sat beside her bed, watching her sleep. Her face was peaceful, her breathing soft and steady. I reached out and took her hand, my heart filled with a bittersweet warmth. "Thank you, Liling," I whispered. "Thank you for saving me." She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Warner," she said, her voice weak but clear. "I am sorry for everything. I was so foolish and jealous. I wanted what you had because I thought it would make me happy. But I see now that happiness is not something you take. It is something you build. I want to build a new life, Warner. I want to be your sister again." I squeezed her hand, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. "You are my sister, Liling. You always will be." The months that followed were a period of healing, both for the Empire and for myself. The threat of the Black Lotus had been eradicated, and the Empress Dowager's network had been dismantled. With Prince Yong in exile and his co-conspirators either dead or imprisoned, the Crown Prince's path to the throne was clear. The Emperor's health continued to decline, and on a chilly autumn morning, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. Fiancé was crowned the new emperor of the empire, and I was crowned the empress beside him. The ceremony was a grand and solemn affair, a testament to the power and glory of the empire. We would now rule together. As I stood on the balcony of the main hall, looking out at the vast crowds that had gathered to pay homage, I felt a sense of awe and responsibility. The weight of the empire rested on our shoulders now. Every decision we made, every action we took, would shape the future of millions of lives. Fiancé, now the emperor, stood beside me, his hand in mine. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice low and filled with a quiet confidence. I looked at him, at the man I had once seen as a cold, ruthless weapon, and saw a partner, a lover, a king. "I am ready," I said. "We are ready." The first few years of our reign were a time of consolidation and reform. We worked together to stabilize the empire, to root out corruption, and to strengthen our alliances with the border kingdoms. I used my intelligence network to keep a watchful eye on the court, ensuring that no new conspiracies could take root. And Fiancé, now the emperor, ruled with a firm but fair hand, earning the respect and admiration of his subjects. My sister, Liling, had become one of my most trusted advisors. She had proven her loyalty beyond any doubt, and she had dedicated herself to serving the empire. She had found a new purpose in life, and she was determined to make amends for her past mistakes. I watched her grow and flourish, becoming a strong, independent woman in her own right. One evening, as we sat in the imperial garden, surrounded by the fragrance of blooming flowers and the soft light of the setting sun, the emperor took my hand and looked at me with a tenderness that made my heart flutter. "You know," he said, a playful smile on his lips, "when you first walked into my study, offering me a deal as an equal, I never imagined we would end up here. I thought you were just another ambitious noblewoman looking to use me for your own ends. "And what do you think now?" I asked, a teasing smile on my own lips. "I think," he said, leaning in to kiss me gently, "that you are the most remarkable woman I have ever known, and I am grateful every day that you walked into my life." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. The world was at peace, and I was at peace with myself. The scars of the past had healed, and the future was bright with promise. I had been a jilted bride, a pawn in a cruel game of love and betrayal. I had risen from the ashes of my humiliation to become the empress of the empire. I had faced every challenge with courage and determination, and I had emerged victorious. But more than that, I had found love. I had found a partner who saw me as an equal, a man who respected my intelligence and my strength. I had found a purpose, a reason to fight, a reason to live. I looked at the emperor, at the man who had become my everything, and I felt a profound sense of gratitude and peace. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth it. I was no longer the naive girl who had fallen in love with a foolish man. I was a woman who had forged her own destiny, who had claimed her own power. And as I looked out at the vast, beautiful empire that stretched out before us, I knew that our story was far from over. This was just the beginning. The Game of Thrones would continue, and there would be new challenges, new enemies, new battles to fight. But I was ready. We were ready. I was the empress. He was the emperor. And together, we would rule the empire for 1,000 years. The years passed, and the empire flourished under our rule. We implemented new policies to support the poor, we strengthened the military, and we forged alliances with foreign powers. The economy boomed, and the people prospered. We were loved and respected by our subjects, and our reign was hailed as a golden age. But even in the midst of this prosperity, we remained vigilant. The court was still a snake pit of ambition and intrigue, and there were always those who sought to undermine us. We dealt with each threat swiftly and decisively, never allowing a single conspiracy to take root. I had long since forgiven Liling, and our sisterly bond had grown stronger than ever. She had become a trusted advisor, a confidant, and a friend. She had also remarried a kind and gentle man who adored her, and she had found the happiness she had always sought. My father, the Duke of Jing, had become one of the emperor's most trusted allies. His intelligence network was invaluable, and his loyalty was unwavering. He had been instrumental in rooting out the remnants of the Empress Dowager's faction, and he had earned the emperor's respect and gratitude. And as for me, I had grown into my role as empress. I was no longer the frightened girl who had walked into the crown prince's study, trembling with anger and fear. I was a confident, powerful woman who had earned her place at the top. The emperor and I had grown even closer over the years. Our love deepened, and our partnership had become unshakable. We were not just rulers, we were soulmates, bound by a bond that transcended politics and power. One evening, as we stood on the balcony of the imperial palace, looking out at the city below, he turned to me and took my hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Do you ever regret leaving behind your old life, your old family, to become empress?" I thought about it for a moment, about the pain of betrayal, the anger of being jilted, the loneliness of the early days of my marriage. But then I thought about everything I had gained: the love of a good man, the power to shape an empire, the chance to make a difference in the world. "No," I said, my voice firm and certain. "I regret nothing. The path was difficult, but it led me here. It led me to you, and that is worth every hardship." He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that lit up his face. "I feel the same way. You are my partner, my love, my equal, and I would not trade you for anything in this world." He pulled me into a kiss, and as the city lights twinkled below us, I knew that I had finally found my home. I was the empress, and I was loved. And that was all that mattered. My story had begun in shame and ended in glory. The girl who had been jilted by a foolish man, who had been betrayed by her own sister, had risen to become the most powerful woman in the empire. And she had done it all by her own strength, her own cunning, and her own courage. I had not simply returned as the crown princess. I had returned as a force of nature, a storm that would reshape the world. And I had only just begun. The peace we had cultivated, however, was not destined to last forever. The empire, for all its strength, was a vast and complex organism, and there were always cracks for trouble to seep through. News arrived from the southern provinces of a growing rebellion, a movement led by a charismatic warlord who called himself the Heavenly King. He was a man of immense power and influence, and he had amassed a massive army that was threatening to break away from the empire. The emperor called an emergency council, and I sat beside him, listening to the reports from the generals. The rebellion was a serious threat, and it would take a massive military campaign to crush it. The emperor was prepared to lead the army himself, but the risk was immense. If he were killed in battle, the empire would be thrown into chaos. "I will go," I said, my voice cutting through the debate. "I will lead the army against the Heavenly King." The room fell silent. The generals stared at me in disbelief. "Your Majesty," one of them said, his voice hesitant, "you are the empress. It is not your place to lead an army." "I am the empress," I said, my voice firm, "and I will not sit idly by while my empire is torn apart by rebellion. I have studied military strategy since I was a child. I know the terrain of the southern provinces better than any of your generals. I will lead the army, and I will win." The emperor looked at me, a mixture of pride and concern in his eyes. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low. "I am sure," I said. "I will not let this empire fall." The campaign was long and brutal. I led the army into the heart of the rebellion, facing the Heavenly King's forces in a series of fierce battles. I proved myself to be a brilliant strategist, outmaneuvering the enemy at every turn. The soldiers rallied around me, inspired by my courage and determination. After a year of relentless campaigning, we finally cornered the Heavenly King in his fortress. The final battle was a bloody, chaotic affair, but we emerged victorious. The Heavenly King was captured and executed, and his rebellion was crushed. I returned to the capital a hero, hailed by the people as the warrior empress. The emperor met me at the palace gates, his face glowing with pride and love. He swept me into his arms and kissed me, right there in front of the entire court. "You did it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved the empire." "We saved the empire," I corrected him. Together. The rebellion's defeat marked the end of an era. The empire was secure, our rule was unchallenged, and our love was stronger than ever. We had faced every challenge, overcome every obstacle, and emerged victorious. As the years continued to pass, the emperor and I grew old together. We watched our children grow and flourish. We celebrated the triumphs of our reign, and we mourned the losses of those we loved. Through it all, we stood together, a united front against the world. And as I lay on my deathbed, surrounded by my family and loved ones, I looked back on my life with a deep sense of satisfaction. I had risen from the ashes of humiliation to become the empress. I had loved and been loved. I had fought and won. I had lived a life of purpose and meaning. The emperor held my hand, his eyes filled with tears. "I am so proud of you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You are the bravest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known." I smiled, a weak, tired smile. "And you are the love of my life," I whispered. "I would not have wanted to walk this path with anyone else." He leaned in and kissed my forehead, his lips soft and gentle. "I will love you forever," he whispered. "As I will love you," I replied. I closed my eyes and the world faded away. I was no longer the jilted bride, the pawn, the schemer. I was Guwan, the empress, the warrior, the lover, the partner, and I had lived a life worth remembering. In the throne room of the grand palace, a new era was beginning. The emperor sat alone on the throne, his face a mask of stoic grief. The courtiers and advisors whispered among themselves, their voices hushed and respectful. The empress was gone, but her legacy would live on. The emperor looked up, his gaze sweeping across the hall. He saw the faces of his children, his advisors, his subjects. He saw the empire he had built with his empress, the empire they had forged together, and he smiled, a sad but proud smile. "She was the greatest woman I ever knew," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "She was my partner, my love, my equal, and I will honor her memory for the rest of my days." The hall was silent. The courtiers bowed their heads in respect. The emperor rose from the throne and walked to the window, looking out at the empire that stretched out before him. He had been a cold, calculating prince. He had married the jilted bride for her intelligence and her power, but she had changed him. She had taught him how to love. She had made him a better man. And now she was gone, but her legacy would live on. The empire she had helped to build would continue to flourish, and the love they had shared would never be forgotten. The story of the jilted bride who became the empress would be told for generations to come. It was a story of triumph over adversity, of love conquering all, of a woman who had risen from the ashes to claim her destiny, and in the hearts of the people, she would always be remembered. She was Guwan, the empress, the warrior, the lover, the legend. The capital was abuzz with the news of the rebellion's end. The victorious army marched through the streets, their banners held high, and the people cheered and threw flowers at their feet. At the head of the procession, I rode on a magnificent white horse, my armor gleaming in the sunlight. The emperor rode beside me, his face a mask of pride and love. We had won, the empire was safe, and we were together. As we reached the palace gates, we dismounted and walked hand in hand into the grand hall. The courtiers and advisors bowed low, their voices a chorus of congratulations. "Your Majesties, you have saved the empire," a senior minister said, his voice trembling with emotion. "We are forever in your debt." The emperor raised his hand, silencing the room. "It is not I who saved the empire," he said, his voice ringing out. "It is the empress. She led the army to victory. She crushed the rebellion. She is the true hero of this war." The room erupted in cheers. The courtiers turned to me, their eyes filled with admiration and respect. I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. "Thank you," I said, my voice soft but steady. "But I could not have done it alone. I had the support of the emperor, the courage of our soldiers, and the faith of our people. Together, we are unstoppable." The cheers grew louder. The emperor squeezed my hand, a silent message of love and support. That night, we celebrated our victory with a grand feast. The palace was aglow with lanterns, and the air was filled with music and laughter. The emperor and I sat at the head of the table, our hands intertwined, watching our subjects celebrate. "I am so proud of you," he whispered, his lips brushing my ear. "You are the most remarkable woman I have ever known." I smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "And you are the most remarkable man I have ever known. I am so glad I married you." He laughed, a joyful, carefree laugh that echoed through the hall. "I am glad you married me too. You have made me a better man." We spent the rest of the night dancing, laughing, and celebrating. The war was over, the empire was safe, and we were together. The years that followed were a time of peace and prosperity. The empire continued to flourish under our rule, and the people loved and respected us. We had faced every challenge, overcome every obstacle, and emerged victorious. And as I looked back on my life, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I had been a jilted bride, a pawn in a cruel game of love and betrayal. But I had risen from the ashes to become the empress. I had found love, purpose, and power. I had lived a life of meaning and significance, and I knew with every fiber of my being that I would not have wanted it any other way. I was Guan, the empress, and my story would be told for generations to come.